The night had been unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that made ordinary moments feel heavier than they should. The rain had begun in a soft drizzle before turning steady, tapping against the rooftops of the small Seattle suburb where Emily Carter lived. She hadn't planned on doing anything special that evening. She simply wanted to find an old photo album her sister had asked for before the upcoming family gathering. That was why she stepped into the garage space filled with dusty boxes, old tools, and forgotten memories. Emily flicked on the light. It buzzed for a second before glowing weakly, casting long shadows across the garage. She didn't think much of it. She was focused on getting the album and heading back inside. She had always been the organized one in the family, the one who remembered birthdays, kept old pictures, and made sure everyone felt included. The garage, however, was her sister's domain, cluttered, chaotic, and overflowing with things no one had used in years. She started searching quickly, not wanting to stay in the cold space longer than necessary. The rain outside grew louder, creating a steady rhythm that made the garage feel almost like its own little world. She pulled a box from the shelf, coughing when a cloud of dust rose into the air. Inside were old holiday decorations. She sighed, placed it aside, and went for the next one. Emily was so wrapped in her task that she didn't hear the door open. She didn't hear the footsteps either, not until they were too close for her to ignore. She jumped slightly when she heard a soft voice behind her. Aunt Emily. She turned, startled, and saw Ethan standing near the doorway. He looked unsure, like he wasn't sure if he should stay or go. His hair was damp from the rain, and his hands were tucked into his hoodie pockets. Emily felt her concern rise immediately. Ethan was usually bright and calm, but tonight his expression carried something deeper, something uneasy. "Oh, Ethan, you scared me," she said with a soft laugh, trying to hide the sudden tension she felt. "What are you doing out here?" He shrugged slightly, avoiding her eyes. "I just needed to talk to someone. I saw the light on." Emily straightened, brushing dust from her hands. She studied him for a moment. He looked different older. Maybe, but also troubled. At 19, Ethan was at that age where life felt confusing, where the world felt too big and too heavy all at once. She had noticed that he'd become quieter over the past months. His parents, always busy with work, often missed the small signs. But Emily didn't. She never had. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Ethan walked inside, the garage door closing behind him with a soft click. The sound made the room feel even more isolated from the rest of the world. He leaned against the workbench, hands still in his pockets, shoulders tense. "I don't know," he admitted after a moment. "I just didn't know who else to talk to." That struck her. It wasn't something he would normally say. Ethan had always been close to his parents, especially his mother, Emily's sister. The fact that he came to her instead meant something was weighing heavily on him. Emily tried to keep her voice calm. "Well, I'm here now. Tell me what's going on." Ethan let out a shaky breath. He didn't look at her at first. He stared at the floor as if trying to collect the pieces of whatever he wanted to say. The rain filled the silence between them, tapping harder against the roof, creating a soft echo in the cold air. He finally lifted his eyes. There was something raw written across his face, an emotion she couldn't place yet. But it made her heart tighten instinctively, "I feel like I've been holding everything in for too long," he said, voice low. "And I don't know what to do anymore." Emily stepped toward him slowly, holding in what? He hesitated again, jaw tightening slightly. His fingers fidgeted inside his pockets. She could see the conflict inside him, the struggle between wanting to speak and wanting to hide. It reminded her of when he was younger and came to her with fears he didn't want others to hear. But this time felt different. He wasn't a child anymore. And whatever he carried now seemed heavier than anything she had seen before. "I feel lost." He finally said the word falling out of him in a breathless whisper. Emily felt the weight of that word. It wasn't a simple feeling. It wasn't something teenagers just said casually. It came from a deeper place. Loneliness, confusion, maybe a sense of being unseen. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Ethan, you can talk to me about anything. You know that?" His eyes met hers again, and for a moment she saw something like relief flash across his face. Not relief from solving something, but relief from finally having someone who cared enough to ask. "That's why I came," he said quietly. "Because you're the only one who notices when something's wrong." Those words hit her harder than she expected. Emily had always cared deeply about her family, but hearing that from Ethan made her realize just how alone he had been feeling. She thought of his parents, good people, loving people, but so busy with work and responsibilities that they sometimes overlooked the emotional struggles happening right in front of them. She took another step, closing the distance. "I'm listening. Tell me." Ethan's eyes softened, but the sadness didn't disappear. He looked like someone fighting against himself, someone trying to be strong even when the weight was too heavy. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped, as if the words were too hard to say. "Emily," he began, voice trembling slightly, "there's something I haven't told anyone." The rain outside intensified, almost as if marking the moment. Her heart beat faster, not out of fear, out of concern. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He swallowed hard, the muscles in his jaw tightening again. "It's something I've been afraid to admit," he whispered. Emily felt the shift immediately the moment the air in the garage changed. She didn't know what he was going to say, but she knew it was something big, something personal, something he had been carrying alone for far too long. And she knew that whatever it was about to change everything she thought she knew about him. Because the look in Ethan's eyes wasn't just sadness, it was a truth begging to be spoken, a truth he had brought to her and only her, and she wasn't ready for what came next. The rain kept falling as if the world outside wanted to hide whatever was happening inside the garage. Emily felt the tension in the air the moment Ethan looked up again. His eyes were full of emotions he didn't know how to name. He looked older than his 19 years, worn out by thoughts he had never shared. She waited quietly, giving him space, hoping he would feel safe enough to speak. Ethan took a shaky breath. "Aunt Emily, I feel like I'm disappearing." The words came out soft, but they hit her like a heavy stone. Emily stepped closer, her heart tightening as she saw the pain he was trying to hide. "What do you mean, disappearing?" she asked gently. He ran a hand through his wet hair, pacing a little, unable to stay still. "I mean, people see me, but they don't see me. I'm there, but I'm not really there. I talk, but no one really listens. Not at home, not at school, not anywhere." Emily felt the ache in his voice. It was the kind of loneliness people often carried in silence, hoping someone would notice. He leaned against the workbench again, breathing hard like he'd just run a mile. "Mom and Dad are always busy. They don't do it on purpose. I know. They're tired. They're working. They think I'm fine. They don't see that I'm falling apart inside." Emily moved a little closer. "Ethan, you're not alone. In this, you're talking to me now. That means something." But he shook his head quickly. "No, that's the problem. You're the only one I can talk to. You're the only person who looks at me and actually sees something." Emily felt warmth and worry mix inside her. She had always been close to him, but she never imagined he felt this strongly. He continued, voice almost breaking. "Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to walls. I come home and no one asks how I am. I eat dinner alone. I study alone. I sleep with my headphones on so I don't feel the silence." Emily swallowed hard. She could picture Ethan sitting alone in his room. It's the world around him moving too fast, leaving him behind. "I've been trying to pretend everything's okay," he said, "but it's not." She nodded slowly. "You didn't have to. Pretend with me." For the first time, he looked at her with a mix of gratitude and sadness. "That's why I came here. 'Cause you're the only person who listens. You always have been." Emily felt the weight of his words settle deep inside. She sat on an old wooden crate and patted the space beside her. "Come sit. Tell me everything." Ethan hesitated, but eventually moved closer. He sat beside her, elbows resting on his knees, head hanging low. The distance between them had never felt more emotional. He spoke again, voice lower now. "Don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore? I try to be strong, try to be patient. I tell myself things will get better, but it feels like I'm fading." Emily reached out gently, placing a hand on his arm. "You're not fading. You're overwhelmed. That happens, especially when you carry everything alone." He nodded weakly. "I guess I just wanted someone to notice." "I noticed," she said softly. "I've always noticed." He blinked, eyes glossy but not crying. "And I don't know why, but every time I feel like I'm falling apart, the first person I think of is you." Emily's heart tightened. She wasn't expecting that. She didn't know whether to feel honored or worried. "Ethan," she said, carefully, "I'm glad you trust me. That means a lot." He shook his head again. "It's more than trust. It's like, I feel safe around you. I can breathe around you." Emily felt the seriousness of his words. She knew he wasn't trying to make things uncomfortable. These were the words of a young man lost in his own emotions, needing someone steady to hold on to even just emotionally. She kept her voice warm but firm. "Feeling safe with someone is important. That's a good thing. Means you know who cares." But Ethan looked troubled. "There's more." Emily felt her stomach tighten. "What more, Ethan?" He took a deep breath, eyes shifting toward the rain-soaked window. "Sometimes I think I care about you too much." Emily froze for a second, not out of fear, but out of concern. She needed to understand what he meant. He quickly added, not in a wrong way. "Not anything like that. Just, I look up to you. I admire you. You're calm, patient, and you never make me feel stupid. You make me feel like I'm someone worth talking to." She exhaled a soft, controlled breath. She could work with this. He wasn't crossing any lines. He was reaching for emotional safety. "Ethan," she said gently, "admiration is normal. Everyone has someone they admire. You're not doing anything wrong by feeling that." He shook his head, clearly frustrated. "But it feels too strong sometimes. And I don't know what to do with it." Emily understood. He wasn't confessing something romantic. He was overwhelmed. His emotions had nowhere to go. They were attaching themselves to the one person who made him feel safe. She spoke softly, choosing every word with care. "What you're feeling is connection. When someone finally understands you, the feeling can be powerful. But it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you're human." Ethan looked at her, the tension easing slightly in his shoulders. "I was scared you'd think I was weird." "You're not weird," she said firmly. "You're struggling. And you're finally talking about it. That's brave." He exhaled a shaky breath, like he had been holding it in for months. "Didn't want to burden you. You're not a burden," she said. "Not now. Not ever." For a moment, silence filled the garage again, but this time it felt softer, calmer. Ethan seemed lighter, as if speaking the truth had loosened the heavy knots inside him. But Emily could sense that there was still something he hadn't said, something deeper, something he was still afraid to reveal. He looked toward her again, voice barely above a whisper. "There's one more thing I haven't told you." Emily braced herself gently, heart steady. "What is it, Ethan?" He drew in a long, trembling breath, and whatever he was about to say next, she knew it would matter even more than everything he had said already. The garage felt colder as Ethan prepared to say the final piece he had been holding back. Emily could hear the rain beating harder against the roof, almost as if the world outside wanted to soften whatever truth was about to come out. Ethan sat, still, his breathing uneven, his eyes drifting between the floor and her face as if searching for the right moment to speak. He finally whispered, Aunt Emily. I don't think my feelings are simple anymore. Her heart skipped, not out of fear, but because she knew this moment mattered. She stayed calm, steady, giving him her full attention. What do you mean? She asked softly. Ethan pressed his palms together, squeezing them tightly as he tried to control the tremor in his voice. I don't mean anything wrong. Don't want you to misunderstand. It's just, I care about you in a way I don't care about anyone else. Emily breathed slowly, reminding herself to stay present, to keep the moments safe. She had seen emotional attachment before young people trying to understand the difference between admiration, comfort, dependence, and deeper feelings. He continued, speaking quickly now, like the words were rushing out of him. You're the only person who talks to me like I matter. You're the only one who notices when I'm struggling. When you look at me, I feel like a real person, not just someone passing through a house that's always busy. Emily moved slightly closer but kept her voice calm and grounded. Okay, Ethan, it's okay to care. It's okay to feel close to someone who listens and understands you. But he shook, his head hard. It feels stronger than that. Oh, and that scares me. His voice cracked on the last word. Emily felt something inside her break, not because of what he felt, but because of how lost he was. He wasn't trying to cross any boundaries. He was overwhelmed by emotions he didn't know how to handle. She spoke with gentle control. Listen, to me, emotions can get confusing when you've been alone with them. When someone finally shows kindness, the connection can feel intense. But it doesn't mean your feelings are wrong. It means you finally feel safe. Ethan looked at her with watery eyes. I didn't want this to be strange between us. It isn't strange, she said firmly. It's human. Ethan breathed out in relief, but the tension still lingered in his shoulders. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to steady himself. I kept thinking, why not someone my own age? Why do I come to you with everything? Emily answered softly. Because you trust me. And trust can feel strong when you haven't had much of it. He listened, hanging on to every word. She could see he needed clarity, direction, something to help him understand the storm he was caught in. She continued, choosing each word with care. Ethan, what you're feeling is connection, not confusion. You admire me because I make you feel seen. You're drawn to me because you've been lonely. But these feelings don't mean something inappropriate. They mean you need support. Ethan sat quietly for a few seconds. Then he finally admitted, voice shaking, sometimes I feel like I don't deserve your kindness, and that scares me into caring more. Like I'm afraid you'll suddenly stop being there for me. Those words hit her hardest. This wasn't about romance at all. It was fear of losing the only emotional anchor he had. Emily gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Ethan, you deserve kindness. You deserve to be understood. And you don't have to fight for my attention. You already have it. His eyes softened and he let out a long, shaky breath. He looked lighter, but his expression still carried guilt, like he expected her to judge him. I didn't want you to think I came here with wrong intentions, he said quietly. I just had nowhere else to put all these feelings. And you chose a safe place, she replied. That's all you did. The silence that followed felt filled with emotion but free of tension. Ethan's breathing slowed, his hands relaxed, and the frantic energy around him began to settle. But Emily could sense there was still one more layer he hadn't touched yet. He turned toward her again, softer this time. Do you ever think about how small moments can change everything? Like 1 minute, you're fine, and the next, everything feels upside down. Emily nodded. Life works like that. Feelings too. Ethan shook his head. I didn't think admitting this would feel so heavy. Thought maybe you'd be upset. I'm not upset, she reassured him. I'm proud of you. It takes strength to understand your own heart. He looked down again, voice barely audible. I didn't know if I was allowed to feel this way. Feelings aren't wrong, she answered gently. They're signals, Tell us what we need. And what you need right now is connection, understanding, and someone steady to talk to. Ethan took this in slowly. His expression softened, the heaviness lifting little by little. So, you're not uncomfortable? Emily shook her head. No, Ethan, I'm not uncomfortable. I just want to make sure you're okay and that we handle your feelings in a healthy way. He nodded, wiping a small tear from the corner of his eye. It wasn't a tear of heartbreak, it was the emotional release of finally being heard, he whispered. I don't want to lose you. You won't, she promised softly. For the first time that night, his shoulders relaxed fully. The storm inside him had shifted. He wasn't cured, but he wasn't alone anymore. Emily pulled him into a calm, steady, comforting embrace. His body trembled for a moment, not from fear, but from relief. He held on to her, gently, careful, grateful. Like someone finally exhaling after holding their breath too long, she whispered, You're safe, Ethan. You're okay. He nodded against her shoulder. I didn't expect to feel this much better. That's what happens when you stop hiding from yourself. They stayed like that for a moment, surrounded by old boxes, the sound of rain, and a sense of emotional honesty that had been missing from Ethan's life for far too long. When he pulled back, his eyes were clearer, his voice steadier, I think. I understand myself a little more now, he said quietly. Emily smiled gently. Good. That's the first step. But deep inside, she knew something else. The next step, the one she would have to take, would change everything. And she wasn't sure how much it would hurt. The morning after the long conversation in the garage arrived quietly, as if the world knew Ethan and Emily both needed a gentler start. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the neighborhood washed clean. Soft sunlight filtered through the windows of Emily's kitchen, but even the warm light couldn't calm the heaviness she felt in her chest. Emily had barely slept. She spent most of the night thinking about Ethan, his confession, his confusion, his loneliness, and the deep emotional attachment he had formed to her without fully understanding it. She cared about him deeply, but she also knew that he needed more than her comfort. He needed guidance, structure, and a path that would help him grow beyond the confusion of last night. She made tea slowly, her mind racing. She knew one thing. Clearly, she couldn't let Ethan continue leaning only on her. If she didn't guide him toward healthier support, his feelings might grow even stronger, and that wouldn't be fair to him or to her. She stepped outside onto her small porch, letting the cool morning air clear her thoughts. She watched the quiet street, the wet pavement reflecting soft light, and she waited. She didn't have to wait long. Ethan walked toward her from across the yard, hands in his pockets, shoulders a little slumped. He looked tired, like he too hadn't slept. But there was something else on his face. Worry, uncertainty, maybe even fear that last night had changed something between them. Morning, he said softly. Morning, Emily replied, offering him a faint, warm smile. Come sit. He sat beside her on the wooden steps, but he didn't look at her right away. He stared at the damp grass, kicking a small rock with his shoe. Are you upset with me? He asked suddenly. The question stung her. She turned toward him quickly. No, Ethan, I'm not upset. Not even a little. But I said too much, he murmured. I made things complicated. Emily shook her head gently. You didn't make things complicated. You were honest. And sometimes honesty brings confusion before it brings clarity. He finally looked at her, searching her face for reassurance. So, we're okay? We're more than okay, she said softly. But we need to talk about what comes next. Ethan tensed again. What do you mean? Emily took a slow breath. She needed to say this carefully, with kindness and firmness at the same time. What you told me last night showed me how much you're carrying, and how alone you've been feeling. I'm glad you trusted me. I'm glad you talked to me. But I think you need more support than just me. His brows pulled together, hurt flickering across his face. Are you saying you don't want me around? Anymore? No, she said quickly. Not at all. I want you in my life, but I also want you to have people your age. Friends you feel close to. A support system that doesn't depend only on me. Ethan looked down, absorbing her words. I get it, he said quietly, though she could see the sadness behind his eyes. She touched his arm gently. Ethan, last night wasn't about you doing something wrong. It's about you finally speaking from the heart. I don't want your world to shrink to only me. You deserve a full life. Connection. People who understand the stage of life. You're in. He nodded slowly. I know. I don't want to lose you as the one person who listens. You won't lose me, she said softly. But you need to learn to lean on others too. He swallowed hard, thinking. The morning air felt still, waiting for him to find his response. After a long moment, he whispered, So, what should I do? Emily smiled gently. First, talk to your parents. Not about everything from last night only, what you're comfortable with, but let them know you're struggling. They love you, even if they've been distracted. He nodded, though he looked unsure. I don't know if I can. You can, she said calmly, and I'll help you if you want. Ethan let out a breath he had been holding. Okay, I'll try. That's enough, she said with a warm smile. She continued, and maybe join something. A club? A group? Something you enjoy. You like hiking, right? He nodded. Yeah, I used to go with Dad before he got busy. Then go again, she encouraged. Find people who share that interest. You'll build connections naturally. He seemed to think deeply. The sadness was still there, but it wasn't as heavy as before. Something inside him was shifting, and therapy, Emily added gently. Talking to someone trained to help could make things easier. Ethan looked uncertain. Again, do you think I need it? Think it would help you sort out your feelings? And there's nothing wrong with that. After a moment, he whispered, Okay, yeah, maybe. Emily smiled. She could feel the change beginning. Not dramatic, but steady. Healthy, they sat quietly for a few seconds before Ethan spoke again. Voice softer, lighter. Emily, thank you for everything. For listening. For not judging me. For not pulling away. I would never pull away, she replied gently. I just want to guide you in the right direction. He looked at her with a kind of gratitude she hadn't seen in him before. Then he said something that made her heart warm. I think you saved me last night. She shook her head. No, you saved yourself by speaking up. He smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him in a long time. Over the next weeks, everything began to shift in small, steady steps. Ethan talked to his parents carefully, not telling them everything, but enough for them to understand he needed them more. They apologized for being absent and promised to do better. They helped him start therapy, supported him when he joined a local hiking group. And slowly, Ethan began building a life that didn't revolve around fear or loneliness. And yet, his connection with Emily remained strong, balanced, healthy, different in a way that felt right. One afternoon. Months later, Ethan came by her house again, but this time he wasn't heavy or overwhelmed. He looked confident, hopeful even. I wanted to tell you something, he said with a shy grin. What is it? Emily asked. I'm doing better, he said. I feel like I can breathe again. She smiled proudly. I knew you would. And I'm glad things are different now, he added. You're still important to me, a lot, but I'm not confused about it anymore. That makes me very happy, she said softly. He nodded. I guess I'm finally growing up. Emily laughed. Yes, you are. As he left that day, she felt something ease inside her, like a chapter had closed gently. Without pain, without regret. The night in the garage hadn't been a moment of fear or confusion. It had been the beginning of healing. And that, she realized, was the most meaningful ending she could have hoped for.